Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and the iPhone 16e has been out for exactly 1 week. It released to the public last Friday, now it's the following Friday, and I've been using it full time as my main device. You'll see I have my SIM card in place, and during the unboxing I moved over my eSIM from my iPhone 16 Pro Max over to the 16e. You'll see the 16 Pro Max says SOS because there's no eSIM installed. So again, I've been using this full time as my main device and wanted to share the overall experience now that I've used it for a while. There's a few really good things to talk about with it and quite a few negative things as well. One of the first positive things, though, is the overall design. Many people really like the simplicity of this design. It's got a singular camera, it's very simple, it's squared off, and many people prefer the squared off sort of feel of the phone instead of the overall rounded sides that we have on the current models. Some people like that, some don't, but either way, it's very comfortable to hold, it's a great size, and many people say it reminds them of the iPhone 4 or 5 series, since it's just sort of an overall simplistic design that's very clean. Of course, on the right-hand side, we have our power sleep wake button. We don't have camera control. We don't have millimeter wave. On the bottom, Apple's added USB-C along with their speaker and microphone. And then on the left-hand side, we do have the action button this time around along with the volume buttons. So again, a very simple phone, very easy, but overall, the design is pretty great. As far as durability, well, I've only used it for a week without a case or any screen protector, but it's held up pretty well. You'll see it does get a fair amount of fingerprints on it, as well as some fingerprints around the outside edge, but that's mostly masked by the overall finish, and it seems to be holding up just fine. I don't have a single scratch on it or anything like that, despite it being last generation ceramic shield, so it seems to be holding up okay. Now, the camera itself is something that I think is okay, especially the forward-facing camera. It seems to be just fine. It's the same 12 megapixel camera we have in the other devices, and the overall sound quality and everything else is similar to that of the iPhone 16 series. So we do have all of the different modes we can switch between after we've recorded video. So if I go ahead and record this video from the iPhone 16e, you can see what this looks like and also what it sounds like with the microphones internally as compared to the microphone that I have here, the studio mic. Now, after I've recorded that, you give it a second, you go in here, and then now you can edit this with the overall studio mics and everything else. So they've included this, and it does sound pretty good. In-frame, studio, cinematic, and standard. So if you use that, it does seem to limit the overall sound, and it's pretty decent overall. However, one of the downfalls is the rear camera. Now, of course, we only have one 48 megapixel camera, and while it's a decent camera, it's definitely not as good as some of the others, even the iPhone 16, due to the sensor and the overall processing. It doesn't have stabilization, and I'll have a comparison with this in the iPhone 16 soon, but it doesn't have stabilization. Some of the quality is a little bit grainy, especially when you zoom in, and it's just not as good. It doesn't look bad, but it's definitely not as good as the 16 or 16 Pro phones. Another really good thing is overall battery life. Now, this has over a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, and this seems to get through the day without a problem. Despite it being a smaller phone with typically a smaller battery, I get through the day without any issue whatsoever. I haven't had to charge it once during the day. So you'll see here, if we take a look at the overall battery stats, so battery health, it has 5 cycles. I've used it for about 7 days. In the last 9 days, you'll see yesterday I had 4 hours and 20 minutes of screen on time, 2 hours and 4 minutes of screen off time, and had used about 75% of the battery. So by the end of the day, I still had a few hours left. Now, in comparison with the latest betas, this is running the public version of iOS 18.3.1, but with betas on my iPhone 16 Pro Max, I'm getting about the same results, maybe a little bit less out of the 16e, but overall I'm fairly impressed. And I think that comes down to not only the overall battery size, but also the new C1 modem. Overall connectivity seems to be a little bit better, and I noticed slightly better speeds in the same location. Now, overall connectivity staying connected, I've had about the same experience in low signal areas. You'll see right now I have 1 bar, and it goes up and down where I am right now from about 1 to 3 bars, but the overall speed is fine. And if we go into speed test, we'll go here. Speed test, you'll see, give it just a second, tap go, and the overall speed is fine for browsing the web and things like that, but I could just turn on Wi-Fi where I am now, but we'll give it just a second, and you'll see it's okay with 1 bar. It could be better, but that does affect battery. But with 1 bar on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, I get much worse battery life. So Apple's done a great job here with the C1 modem, and they're supposedly going to do the same with Wi-Fi in the future. So we're waiting for them to do that. That will probably be around the iPhone 17 launch. One of the downsides, though, with the overall connectivity is if you have a Wi-Fi 6E or 7 modem, this is going to be a lot slower. So if we go back here, let's go back, wait for it to connect, and you'll see here, I'll compare this with the 16 Pro Max in just a moment, but we'll connect here. Now both are on Wi-Fi. I have a Wi-Fi 7 router. It's an Eero router, and on the 16E, we're getting about 450 megabits per second. On the 16 Pro Max, because of Wi-Fi 7, I'm close to 1,000 megabits per second. And I do have 1,000 down by about 40 up or so. So you can see the overall results here. Upload speeds should be similar, but download speeds are definitely going to be better on the 16 Pro Max with Wi-Fi 7. So that gives you an idea. However, downloading big files is the only place you'll see that, and typically most people won't notice the difference there. One of the major problems for me with this phone is its lack of MagSafe. After using it for a week, it's just a big pain. In fact, if I bring in this ESR charger here, this works great, but it has MagSafe, and unless you have a third-party case, of course you can charge with it. It's only at 7.5 watts, but what I've found is I typically have to place it down here where I charge something like AirPods. Now it will charge here a little bit slower, probably help with battery health, but overall that's just a downside if especially you're using MagSafe accessories like I am. So if you use a MagSafe stand like this, just place it on there every night before you go to bed, this makes it a huge pain. But you can use the lower ones here for things such as AirPods, and that's something that isn't the end of the world. It's something we did before we had MagSafe, but I really wish they would have included it. Again, you could use a case with MagSafe and that solves that problem, but you don't get the faster charging and the temperature sensors and things like that. But again, it is only 7.5 watts. And the odd thing is Apple said the reason they don't include it is because most people that use the iPhone SE 3rd generation use the cable to charge. That may be true, but having MagSafe with all the accessories that go with it is something that I value. So of course, it may not be the end of the world for most people, but it is definitely an inconvenience if you're used to it. When it comes to the display, this is another negative for me. After using this for a few days, this really bothers my eyes due to PWM. So pulse width modulation is the way it controls brightness, flickering the display faster or slower. And compared with even using the iPhone 16 Plus, something here about this display really bothered my eyes to the point where it was very hard to look at it. In fact, because of this display, I'm looking forward to going back to the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Of course, it only has 60 Hz as far as the refresh rate. That's not as big of an issue to me as it may be for some, but it is something that I think they should include for the price point. Same with the iPhone 16, but either way, typically it's smooth and it's not much of an issue. But the overall PWM flickering, you can see at 240 frames per second, is definitely noticeable at higher speeds, and things that just really shouldn't be a problem these days are bothering my eyes like crazy with this phone. So unfortunately, that's a downside. Also, the notch may be a downside for some people. I don't really notice it. The dynamic island is nice, but I don't really care about that personally. It's fine to have the notch. I would like the dynamic island, but that's not a reason for me not to buy it. But the display itself bothering my eyes is definitely a reason to avoid it for me. It's also very tough to see in bright sunlight. I didn't recognize this until I was in bright sunlight and thought, wow, I really can't see this. I went to turn up the display brightness and it was already up, and there was nothing I could do about it. Then I brought out the 16 Pro Max next to it and I could see it because it goes up to 2000 nits, where this is 800 typical, 1200 in HDR. So that's definitely a downside for me and something that was bothersome. I don't miss the camera control at all. That's something that I could care less about on the 16 Pro Max. I typically only use it to open the camera, and so if Apple doesn't include it in the future, it doesn't bother me, so I don't think it would bother most people looking for this phone. And also the speakers seem to be fine. So if I go into one of my videos, photos. Now, with the decibel meter, we were able to get up to about 82 decibels or so. That's a little bit lower than what we get on the Pro and Pro Max phones. It does sound clear overall. The quality is decent, and it is lacking the extra little volume we get with some of the higher end phones. But overall, it sounds good. It has good stereo sound and no issues whatsoever. When it comes to the overall usability of the phone, one thing I was really disappointed with is iOS 18. This has the latest version of iOS 18.3.1 at the time of this video. So if we go to About, you'll see iOS 18.3.1 is installed here. And if we go back, the overall experience has been okay, but it's very choppy from time to time. I expect with maybe an older phone with some new software, that would be the case, but from time to time, I would go into maybe music. It would stutter when I close it. If I went into the keyboard, sometimes it would lag up to about 3 seconds or so. I'd go to type, so if I go into notes, so in notes, if I type, hi, this is iOS 18.3.1 on iPhone 16e, you'll see it's keeping up just fine right now. But there are times I would go into it and it would just lag for a few seconds. It was very annoying, and sometimes that would happen throughout the OS. This is just a lack of optimization of iOS 18 and something I've talked about in many other videos for quite some time. But the overall usability is generally pretty good, but from time to time you get these odd lags here and there where you go into maybe a different app, whether it's weather or something else. This is Mercury weather, by the way. Maybe go into the camera, it would lag. It would even freeze from time to time. I'd go into photos, it would freeze for a few seconds. Then I'd switch to video, then I could use it. It's just a very odd experience for such a brand new device. Now, I do expect Apple to support this for years to come with iOS 18, maybe all the way up to iOS 25, something along those lines. And we do have things such as Apple Intelligence with Image Playground, and we could add maybe a couple different things here. Myself at a volcano with sunglasses, give it a moment, and then it creates an image. It's just a sketch of an image. It's not anything super impressive yet. Maybe it will be in the future, but you saw the lag when I swiped home. And this is something that I just find very disappointing for a new phone. Someone that takes this out of the package for the first time is going to be very disappointed that it's lagging and it's brand new. So that's something that we're not seeing on some competitors' phones at this point, and I think Apple really needs to fix that. The overall experience when it isn't lagging is great battery life, the overall design, usability, being able to reach across the screen, and everything else is fine. But it's the main thing with the screen that bothers me, and then of course the lag with the overall OS and lack of MagSafe. I think it's an okay phone, so if you're wondering if you should buy one, I would say if maybe you're on an older phone, such as an iPhone SE, maybe you're going back to something such as an iPhone 11, it's going to feel like a really nice upgrade. However, if you're considering this phone, I would also consider an iPhone 16. You'll get all of the future updates, you'll get an extra camera, you'll also get some additional updates with the display, having a thinner bezel around the outside, having a dynamic island, and I think it's just a better experience overall. So I really have a hard time recommending this at $600. If it was free or maybe $429, it would be a decent buy, but at the current price, I think it's too expensive. So that's been my week using this full time, and it's been okay, but I'm looking forward to going back to the 16 Pro Max because of different things such as the display and lack of MagSafe. Also, the smaller display isn't for me. I like the larger display. It's easier to see. You can make things bigger on the screen, and I just prefer it overall. Let me know what you think of the new iPhone 16e in the comments below, if you're picking one up, if you've been using one, or what you would pick instead. I'd love to hear from you there. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.